Have you ever wondered why 1969 is remembered as the wildest year in muscle car history? We're not just talking about fast cars, we're talking about true steel beasts that challenged the streets, dominated the tracks, and left behind a legacy that could never be repeated. Today, we're going to uncover the models that defined that unforgettable year. And before we begin this journey back in time, let me ask you something. If you're a true classic car enthusiast and want to keep reliving this golden era with me, hit the like button on this video and subscribe to the channel right now. Here, we celebrate the stories, the power, and the thrill of the muscle cars that made history. 1969 Dodge Charger RT. This car became an immortal symbol thanks to popular culture, especially for its appearance in the series The Dukes of Hazzard as the famous General Lee. But reducing it to just a TV icon would be unfair because the Charger RT was already on its own, an untamable beast that carved its name into the history of muscle cars. The first thing that strikes you is its presence. Its long, aggressive, muscular lines radiate power even when standing still. The 1969 model introduced subtle but important changes compared to the previous year. A split grille that looked like a defiant smirk and tail lights stretching from end to end like a roar in the form of design. It was a car born to dominate both the streets and the racetracks. Under the hood, the Charger RT offered engines ranging from the 440 Magnum V8 to the legendary 426 HEMI, a true masterpiece of engineering that officially delivered over 425 horsepower, though we all know the real figure was much higher. The roar of the Hemi wasn't just a sound, it was a heartbeat that quickened the pulse of anyone who heard it, a melody of pure adrenaline capable of giving you goosebumps. It wasn't a car for everyone. It was a constant challenge, a reminder that you were in control of raw power on wheels. The history of the Charger RT is also deeply connected to the world of racing. Dodge designed it to impress in NASCAR, and although the aerodynamics of the original model weren't enough to beat its rivals at the high speeds of the ovals, it laid the foundation for the creation of the Daytona, that winged, long-nosed monster that came shortly after. In that sense, the Charger RT was the testing ground, the first warrior that showcased Dodge's potential in the golden age of racing. A fascinating and unique detail is how this car, beyond its performance, became a cultural icon. Thousands of fans in the 70s and 80s dreamed of it, not just for its technical numbers, but because it represented rebellion, freedom, and lifestyle. The General Lee jumping fences and outrunning the law was the perfect metaphor. The Charger wasn't just a car, it was a symbol of escape, of eternal youth, of defying the rules. Today, more than 5 decades later, seeing a 1969 Charger RT still provokes a visceral reaction. Whether you find it in a museum, at a classic car show, or roaring down a highway, it always sparks the same effect. Your heart beats faster, dopamine rushes through your veins, and you can't help but imagine yourself behind the wheel, with the wind hitting your face and the roar of the V8 as your soundtrack. 1969 Camaro SS. This was a magical year for the Camaro, a year when the brand decided to show the world it was ready to play in the big leagues of muscle cars. The SS that year wasn't just an evolution of the original model, it was a statement of intent. Every curve of its body, every detail of its design, and every roar of its engines carried a clear message. This was not a car to go unnoticed, it was a machine born to leave its mark. The Camaro arrived with a redesign that made it more robust and muscular than ever. Its lines were sharper, the grille more aggressive, the fenders wider. At first glance, it looked like it was moving even when it was standing still. But what truly made it unforgettable wasn't just its looks, it was what it hid under the hood. There you could find V8 engines ranging from the 350 to the mighty 396, all of them capable of delivering sensations that went beyond numbers. They were pure emotion compressed into metal. But 1969 held an even juicier secret. That year, Chevrolet opened the door to special versions that would become legend. The first was the ZL1, an almost mythical Camaro, of which only 69 units were built. Equipped with an all-aluminum 427 engine originally designed for the track, the ZL1 wasn't just a street car, it was a missile disguised as a coupe. Officially rated at over 430 horsepower, but in reality reaching closer to 500, it was so brutal that it was nearly impossible to tame. And that difficulty was precisely what made it irresistible for true speed fanatics. Another jewel of that year was the COPO program, short for Central Office Production Order, a system meant for corporate orders that some clever dealers used to create true monsters. Thanks to that loophole, it became possible to fit 427 engines into seemingly ordinary Camaros. The fascinating part is that Chevrolet had never designed the Camaro for such massive blocks, but enthusiasts made sure to break the rules. The result was cars that looked ready for war, with overwhelming power hidden beneath a relatively modest appearance. 1969 Ford Mustang Boss 429. This wasn't just another muscle car built to look good on the streets or turn heads at dealerships. It was a machine conceived with a clear purpose: to homologate a competition engine for NASCAR. That made it a different creature altogether, a car born from the demands of the racetrack that, almost by accident, ended up on the streets as one of the most exclusive Mustangs ever built. By the late 1960s, Ford knew that to compete on equal terms in NASCAR, it needed a bigger, more powerful, more advanced engine. That's how the 429 was born, a monstrous V8 that needed to be homologated. To meet the rules, at least 500 units had to be produced for street use, and what better showcase than the Mustang? But fitting such a massive block into the engine bay wasn't easy. The engine was so wide and tall that Ford had to send bodies to Carcraft, a specialized company, to redesign parts of the chassis so the beast could fit in place. The result was a Mustang unlike any other, with a personality distinct from the rest. On the outside, it didn't try to scream for attention. Its lines were elegant yet muscular, with a subtle hood bulge that hid the mechanical jewel inside. That detail, along with the Boss 429 emblems, were the only hints that this was a car sharing its bloodline with race cars. It didn't need to exaggerate its looks because what truly mattered was beneath the skin. The semi-hemispherical 429 engine was officially rated at 375 horsepower, but those who drove it knew the real number was closer to 500. It was an engine that loved high revs, designed to roar around the ovals at impossible speeds. On the street, it could seem tame and idle, but pressing the throttle unleashed a torrent of force that turned every drive into an almost spiritual experience. One curious and fascinating fact is that, despite its power, the Boss 429 wasn't the fastest straight-line Mustang in the family. Its suspension and setup made it heavier and less explosive than some of its siblings, like the Mach 1. But that didn't matter, because what the Boss offered was something rarer: exclusivity. Only 859 units were built in 1969, each carefully assembled, each destined to become a collector's treasure. And now the inevitable question for you: if you had to choose between the Camaro SS, with its ZL1 and COPO versions made to break all the rules, or the Mustang Boss 429 born directly from NASCAR, which one would you pick? Leave it in the comments, because this is the eternal battle of muscle cars, and we want to know whose side you're on in this story. 1969 Pontiac GTO the Judge. When the muscle car era was in full swing, Pontiac decided that having a powerful car wasn't enough. It needed personality, a provocative style that would make people talk about it. That's how the Judge was born, a special version of the GTO that not only offered brutal engines like the Ram Air 3 and Ram Air 4, but also carried a defiant, almost irreverent attitude that instantly turned it into a legend. The name itself said it all. It was inspired by a popular catchphrase from a comedy show of the time: "Here comes the Judge." Pontiac took that cultural nod and transformed it into a declaration of war against the competition. This wasn't just another muscle car. It was the judge delivering the verdict on the streets and on the tracks. And it did so with a presence that was impossible to ignore. Unlike more discreet models, the judge arrived with a styling package that screamed power and rebellion. It was offered in bright, unconventional colors, with carousel red being the most iconic. It also came with side stripes, a huge rear wing, and bold emblems that made it clear who was in charge. It was a car designed to be seen, to make people turn their heads and know something special was happening. Under the hood, the mechanical options backed up its reputation. The Ram Air 3 engine was already a marvel with over 366 official horsepower, but the real monster was the Ram Air 4, a high-revving powerhouse that turned every acceleration into a visceral experience. The interesting twist is that, despite its flashy appearance and bold name, the Judge was originally conceived as a budget-friendly response to the market. Pontiac had planned to offer it as an affordable version of the GTO to attract younger buyers, but the plan shifted. The car ended up being positioned as something more exclusive, a rare blend of attractive price and unique personality. That duality, combined with its performance, made it an instant success. With over 6,800 units sold in its first year, it became a cultural symbol of late 60s youth. It represented rebellion, freedom, and the idea that driving could be an act of personal expression as much as transportation. 1969 Chevrolet Nova SS 396. In the world of muscle cars, dominated by giants, there was one car that dared to challenge the biggest names in a more compact format. That car was the Nova, a machine that seemed small and unassuming, but hid under its hood a heart powerful enough to make much larger vehicles tremble. It was, in a way, the wolf in sheep's clothing of the year, and that's exactly why it earned a special place in enthusiasts' memories. The Nova wasn't born as a muscle car in its early versions. It was designed to be light, affordable, and practical. But by the late 1960s, Chevrolet understood that the horsepower craze was spreading everywhere and decided to offer the SS package with a 396 V8 engine. That completely changed the car's personality. Suddenly, that simple compact became a predator of asphalt, surprising everyone with its takeoffs. With more than 350 horsepower in its common setups and exceeding 375 in high-performance versions, the Nova had something special: its weight-to-power ratio. Its body was smaller and lighter than that of a Chevelle or Camaro, which gave it brutal acceleration. On the quarter mile, it could leave much bigger and pricier rivals stunned. It was the kind of car that humiliated anyone who underestimated it at a stoplight, because nobody expected such a compact car to roar with such violence. The 1969 design also added to its unique character. It wasn't exaggerated or overloaded with details, rather simple and straightforward, as if to remind everyone that what really mattered was inside. Still, the SS badge and the hood bulge were clear signals that this wasn't just any Nova. For those in the know, those small details were enough to understand they were looking at a car that could bite hard. A curious fact is that, precisely because of its size and power, the Nova SS became one of the favorites for drag racing. Many enthusiasts modified it even further, extracting power figures that went far beyond what Chevrolet had originally envisioned. That ease of being turned into a lethal quarter-mile weapon gave it a reputation as a fearsome street car, sometimes even more respected than the era's giants. 1969 Dodge Charger Daytona. This car wasn't conceived for the streets in the first place, but to dominate a very specific battlefield, the NASCAR tracks. The story of its creation is as fascinating as its silhouette. By the late 1960s, Dodge was desperate to improve the Charger's performance in NASCAR. The 1969 RT model was powerful, yes, but on high-speed ovals, it suffered from poor aerodynamics. The competition, especially Ford with its Torino Talladega, was gaining the upper hand. That's when Dodge decided to break all the rules and design a car that looked almost like something out of science fiction. The result was the Charger Daytona, which wore up front a nose cone nearly 19 inches long designed to slice through the air like a knife, and at the rear, a monumental wing that wasn't just a striking aesthetic feature, but had a clear purpose, providing stability at over 186 miles per hour. This combination was revolutionary. In 1970, a Daytona became the first NASCAR car to break the 200-mile-per-hour barrier, setting a milestone in American motorsport history. Beneath that futuristic bodywork, the Daytona offered equally impressive engines. It came with the 440 Magnum V8 and, for the lucky few, the legendary 426 HEMI. Both were capable of unleashing a torrent of horsepower that, combined with the aerodynamic advantage, turned the Daytona into an unstoppable beast on the track. Although only about 503 units were built to meet homologation requirements, that number was enough to secure its place in history as one of the rarest and most desired muscle cars ever made. One curious detail is that, at the time, many street buyers didn't understand the design. Some even thought the tall wing and pointed nose looked ridiculous, but what seemed extravagant at dealerships was pure genius on the racetrack. The Daytona wasn't built to please everyone, it was built to win, and it did that brilliantly. And here comes the inevitable question for you. Would you choose the Charger RT, that symbol of rebellion and raw power, or this Charger Daytona, a monster born to humiliate rivals on NASCAR tracks? Leave it in the comments, because your choice shows which side of automotive history you stand on. 1969, Pontiac Firebird Trans Am. That year marked the very first production of this special Firebird version, and what few know is that only 697 units were built. That initial rarity instantly made it an object of desire, and over time, a collector's piece revered by classic car enthusiasts. Pontiac wanted to give the Firebird a more aggressive, sporty identity, capable of going head-to-head with the Camaro Z28 and the Mustang Boss 302, which dominated the scene. Thus was born the Trans Am, named after the famous SCCA Trans-American Racing Series. In fact, Pontiac paid royalties for every car sold just to use that name, showing how determined the brand was to link this model directly to competition. The 1969 Trans Am wasn't simply a Firebird with extra decorations. It came with a complete performance-oriented package. Under the hood were Ram Air 3 and Ram Air 4 engines with 400 cubic inches, delivering between 335 and over 345 official horsepower. But the real magic was in the tuning, revised suspension, sharper steering, and details that made it much more capable in the corners than most of its rivals. It was a car born to devour both straightaways and winding tracks, a true sports car with a muscle car soul. Aesthetically, the first Trans Am had a unique personality. It was only offered in white with blue stripes, a direct homage to American motorsport. It added a discreet but effective rear spoiler, functional hood scoops, and badges that made it clear this was no ordinary Firebird. The appearance was elegant but carried a defiant air, as if foreshadowing the legend it was destined to become. One curious fact is that, at the start, the Trans Am wasn't a sales success. Its exclusivity wasn't intentional, but rather the result of limited production and a market already crowded with powerful options in 1969. Yet that very scarcity turned it into a jewel over time. Today, finding one of those original 697 examples is almost like uncovering hidden treasure, a time capsule that connects us to the very moment when a legend was born. 1969, Ford Torino Talladega. This car was born with a very clear purpose: to conquer NASCAR. It wasn't conceived for discretion or to satisfy design whims. It was built as a precise competition tool, a machine with refined aerodynamics created to break records and take on rivals that already dominated the tracks. In a year when the technological battle between automakers was at its peak, The Talladega represented Ford's aggressive response to secure supremacy. Up to that point, the Torino was an attractive and powerful muscle car, but at high oval track speeds, it suffered from serious aerodynamic drag. While Dodge was preparing the Charger Daytona with radical solutions, Ford opted for a subtler yet equally revolutionary approach. The Talladega received a modified body with an elongated, gently sloped nose designed to slice through the air more efficiently. In addition, the bumpers were integrated into the body at a 6-degree angle, something never before seen on a production car, which gave it a vital advantage on the track. Under the hood, Ford installed the robust 428 Cobra Jet V8, officially rated at 335 horsepower, though, as was common in that era, the real numbers were higher. This power plant wasn't just about delivering raw speed, it was built to withstand the brutal demands of long NASCAR races. The Talladega wasn't just fast, it was consistent, a warrior prepared to endure the punishment of extended competition without losing strength. An interesting fact is that Ford built exactly 750 street units to comply with homologation rules. That meant that, although its true mission was the track, a few lucky buyers could drive on public roads a car that was practically an aerodynamic missile disguised as a muscle car. These models were distinguished by small details, such as unique trim pieces, special colors, and finishes that set them apart from the standard Torino. In competition, the Talladega fulfilled its mission perfectly. With drivers like David Pearson and Richard Petty, the car became a true dominator. Pearson won the 1969 NASCAR championship in a Torino Talladega, proving that Ford had hit the bullseye with its aerodynamic strategy. That season solidified Ford as a fearsome rival and opened a new chapter in the so-called Aero Wars of the late 1960s. 1969, Dodge Coronet Super B. At a time when automakers were competing to see who could offer the most horsepower and the most aggression, Dodge made a move that shocked everyone, installing the 440 Magnum engine with a trio of two-barrel carburetors, the famous six-pack. The result was a car so brutal that it quickly earned the reputation of being one of the most feared Mopars on both the street and the quarter-mile strip. What's fascinating about this model is how it was born. The Super B had originally been conceived as an affordable muscle car, an option for young buyers who wanted speed without paying the price of a Charger RT or a GTX. But with the arrival of the A12 package in 1969, that budget-friendly concept transformed into a disguised monster. The 446-pack officially delivered 390 horsepower, though in practice it was much closer to 420. Even more impressive was the engine's instant response thanks to its 3 carburetors, which turned every acceleration into a jolt of pure adrenaline. Aesthetically, the A12 also stood apart. It carried a fiberglass hood with functional scoops held down by pins instead of conventional hinges. There were no unnecessary luxuries. This car was built to run, and every detail made that clear. Even the wheels were unique, with high-performance tires completing an imposing, ready-for-action look. It was a car that screamed power without apologizing for it. A curious fact is that the Super B became an immediate favorite in drag racing. Its combination of relatively accessible price, overwhelming power, and ease of modification turned it into the perfect tool for those looking to dominate the quarter mile. Many of these cars were pushed to their absolute limits, which is why today it's difficult to find completely original examples, something that makes surviving ones even more valuable as collector's items. The name six-pack also added to its mystique. It didn't just describe its carburetor setup. It evoked a youthful, rebellious, almost provocative image, as if the car itself were the metallic embodiment of a night of excess and speed. 1969, Chevrolet Chevelle SS 396. If there's one car that perfectly embodies what it meant to be a muscle car at the end of the 1960s, it's the Chevelle SS. It wasn't just a powerful automobile, it was a symbol of raw mechanical brutality on the streets, a machine you could find parked at a high school or roaring down the quarter mile, representing the American dream of having power under your right foot. The Chevelle SS had already debuted a few years earlier, but 1969 was when it reached one of its most iconic forms. The design that year masterfully combined elegance with aggression. Its lines were muscular, with wide fenders and a front end that seemed to stare down anyone in its path. The SS emblems, strategically placed on the grille and sides, were like warnings. This wasn't just any Chevelle. It was a super sport. Under the hood, the Chevelle SS offered the 396 V8 in different configurations, ranging from 325 horsepower to more than 375 in the most powerful versions. That number, in a mid-size car, meant every acceleration unleashed a torrent of force that was hard to put into words. Many owners recalled that the real thrill wasn't just the numbers, but the visceral sensation of pressing the accelerator and feeling the car literally launch forward with a roar that sent shivers down your spine. An interesting detail is that the Chevelle SS 396 was also relatively affordable compared to other muscle cars of the time. This helped it become one of the most popular models of its generation, both in sales and in street presence. Its balance of price, design, and power turned it into a kind of people's car for speed lovers, further cementing its legendary status. Another curious fact is that although the 396 engine was already formidable, Chevrolet was preparing the stage for something even bigger. The Chevelle would be one of the first to receive the legendary 454 block in 1970, but the groundwork for that transition was laid here, in the SS 396. It's as if this car was the perfect rehearsal before the definitive explosion of power that came the following year. And there you have it, the wildest, most brutal, and unforgettable muscle cars born in 1969, a one-of-a-kind year that marked the peak of the golden era of American performance. Each of these cars wasn't just steel and horsepower, they were symbols of rebellion, freedom, and power that still make our hearts race today. Now, I want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments, which of these 1969 Titans was your favorite? Don't think too hard. Write your answer right now, because your opinion is what keeps this conversation alive among classic car enthusiasts. And if you enjoyed this journey, I invite you to continue with a video I know you'll love, the fastest muscle cars of the 1960s. Click and join me, because the speed and excitement aren't over yet. See you there.